LinkedIn. If you're there watching us, then do give us a wave. We're here. I'm a bit nervous because I haven't done one of these for a while, but we're here to talk about the relationship between social media and search engines, which is one that Kelly and I did last year, but we thought things have changed a little bit and it was a long time ago. So we were just going to have a bit of a discussion today about how things have changed and what you can do to improve your social media presence and get yourself seen in search. So I'm Mel, I'm a content strategist and social media trainer and email consultant, so a few things going on there, but essentially I help businesses and individuals to understand what content they should put out there, what their unique messaging should be and where they need to go and make sure it fits with the time, money and resources they have available. And I'm going to let Kelly introduce herself now and then we'll dive into the chat.
Cool. Thanks, Mel. Hi, everyone. We are KD Web and we do basically websites, but with foundations of SEO, so search engine optimization, which everyone loves to talk about. And just making sure that your websites are powerful and actually seen online and not just sitting there doing nothing. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. That's all right. I do love our chats, and you always explain things so well, because I think for people watching, there's a lot of jargon around social media, search, analytics, marketing in general, like there is with most industries. But we're going to try and keep that to a minimum today, because we know it's just a whole other kind of topic that people don't really need to know about. So I think for us, the relationship between social media and search engines and everything in between is becoming increasingly important. And there's a lot of different ways that you can connect the two. So I think quite often, and we were discussing this before, kind of your website is seen as sort of separate to your social media, particularly if you have different people doing different things. And actually, there's lots of ways that you can integrate the two to make them behave and work better. And that's also been influenced by, an increase in social media being used as search engines, particularly amongst kind of Gen Zers and the younger people, but also I think due to the onset of AI, which we'll talk a little bit about. It's just the way that consumer behaviour is changing, because people actually want to know that the website they see is actually run by humans and not by bots. So I think one of the key things is just the really key thing to SEO is around understanding, well, who your audience are and what they want to see, but also around your keywords. So Kelly, do you want to explain a little bit about keywords, what they are and kind of how they work now? Because it's not really just a word, is it?
It's not really just a word, no. So when it comes to keywords, they're things that you put into your website or your blog posts that will help the user to find you on the internet. And it's the same on a search engine like Google, and it's now, as we're going to talk about today, similar on social media platforms. So if you think about a keyword, you could think of trainers, for example. That's one word, and it's really
competitive.
Hard. Very, very hard to rank for. Yeah, so it would be hard to come up number one for something like trainers on social media. It would be difficult, impossible on Google as well. So what we do is we use phrases, and they are multiple words, lots of words. And they could be a whole sentence, so it could sort of make sense, but it's about 4-5 words. And that's the kind of thing that we use today. So you're then targeting, you've got less competition when you're targeting that kind of key phrase. That's where keywords or key phrases come into all of this.
Okay, cool. And but also I think it's a case of, particularly nowadays, kind of writing naturally as well, isn't it? So actually thinking about what your audience wants to see and worrying about those keywords. But I think, as you said last year, having that kind of writing naturally, but having that little parrot on your shoulder, which is saying, remember to include these keywords and key phrases, so people actually know what you're talking about and that you're ranking in search.
So we have so much here. It's very much about writing for search engines, and it is, but it's also about writing for humans. In fact, I would put that at the forefront, writing for your human audience. By the way, I don't think we said, if you have any questions, because we haven't explained something.
I don't think we did, no.
please do ask questions. Yeah, very open. So just as we're going.
Yeah.
So I'm sure people would anyway. So yeah, just talking about, I've lost my track now, Mel. Where were we?
We were talking about writing, putting the kind of human at the forefront, but also writing for the search engine as well.
So when we're thinking about writing blog posts or writing web pages, I always say that it's you want to research your key phrases first. So really, when you're writing any content at all, make sure you know what people are looking for. So you're answering people's questions rather than writing something that you want to write about and no one is looking for. So you take that key phrase, you take your idea, you look on some keyword tools. There's some free ones out there. I've got a few that I could suggest for you. You look and find what people are searching for, and then you include that into your blog posts and in your social media stuff. So the search engines are recognizing that this person writes lots about this industry, and then also on your social media you're writing a lot about that industry too, and you'll eventually meet and so they understand what you're doing and how you're helping people, helping the audience.
And I think it's and just around kind of being as specific with those search phrases as well. So, for example, if you are a human resources consultant who specialises in working within certain sectors or within certain areas, you need to say that, because you're going to rank much better in search than if you just talk about more general HR practices.
Yeah, and you can do that geographically as well. So if you're actually aiming for something like Oxfordshire, because I'm in Oxfordshire today. So yeah,
no snow.
No snow today. If you're aiming for that geographical location as well, you can often mention Oxfordshire or South East London, whatever it is, and then search engines will realise that you're in that location as well. So
and I think that's really key for local businesses as well, because I think they've always, smaller local businesses have always generally struggled with getting their websites in, because there are, particularly if you're selling something like trainers, as you said, because you're going up against Nike, JD Sports, all of those big names. Whereas so I think, which is why social media for those businesses has always been a good place to kind of get seen and drive traffic to the website. So I think I think social media and your website and all of the things in between really kind of need to fit together. But over the last probably 3 years, we've seen, and particularly since COVID, an increased use in social, but also an increase in the sort of social media being used as a search engine, because it very much used to be a case of kind of social media was your sort of brand awareness piece. It was much easier to share a link and push people over to the websites. You didn't kind of get penalised by that for the platforms. But, they've obviously got more and more sophisticated, and there's more and more features, which makes it kind of really difficult for us all to stay on top of. But I think there's a few things here that the keywords have become increasingly important on social media, and exactly so use them exactly the way Kelly described. So do your research, think about the phrases that people are looking for, and make sure that you include that in your content, but also really do make sure that you're human. So try and ignore all of those AI prompts and things like that as much as possible, because actually, consumer behaviour's changed. And I think people will go over to a website, check you out, but they'll also want to see that you've got a footprint in social media that's showing your team, it's showing the things about behind the scenes, it's validating what you're saying, and it's also got parts of that content in, just so you've got a more consistent and slightly larger digital footprint.
I had a great example actually, because I found an illustrator a couple of months ago who is amazing, and I actually wanted a specific kind of illustrator that was drawing maps, and I actually found her on Instagram because she had done a post about illustration and maps, and they were the key phrases that I was using. So that was really interesting. Then I could like go and look at her visual stuff, because obviously she's in a visual industry, and that really helped me find her. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, I think there's lots of good examples about that. And again, I mean, it used to be very much, I think, probably the time to talk about hashtags, because these are one of the things that people are saying, should I be using them? Shouldn't I? So hashtags were invented by Twitter in 2007, because which obviously Twitter is kind of dead now. Hashtags are slightly going that way, but it's
organizing people's messages, isn't it? That's why they were included in the originally, because people weren't using the key phrase in their
no, and the search engines didn't have the capabilities to kind of pick up those individual keywords within the text as well. So hashtags were kind of seen as a way of kind of grouping that content in mini feeds. So it essentially worked in the same way. But if you typed in hashtag illustrations or maps, it would pull up more of those. Now it scans all of your content. So it will scan the image. So it's really important to include things like alt text, but also make sure those images link up with the text and things you're talking about. And I think also the other thing that's becoming more and more important is to be really aware of on social media kind of users' behaviour, not just in terms of keywords, but things that people expect to see. So in order to validate yourself and get that traffic to a website, you kind of need to show that actually, your people are real. You've got content that validates you, whether it's testimonials or, you've got somebody wearing those lovely trainers that you sell, or you've got somebody doing a video like a video case study, hence the kind of onset rise of influencers. But actually, I think there's more of an expectation for people to actually want to see content from real people. It's really important to factor that into your sort of strategic way of thinking.
I love seeing Levi's and Adidas and those kind of brands now. If you go onto their Instagram or their websites and things, they've got people wearing the trainers or something that you're looking at, and I love that because it's real people, isn't it, wearing the real thing. That just popped into my head.
Yeah, and I think it's people are fundamentally interested in people, and I think again, I think just from I'm obviously not an SEO expert, which is why I invited you on to talk to me. But I think there's certain things I see a lot of websites where people they don't really have a proper about page. So they'll have an about us, but actually they don't really, they don't necessarily mention the people that work there. They might not even have pictures of their staff, or if they do, it may only be senior leaders, and it will only really tell you a little bit about that senior leader's role at the company. It's not quite providing that human element. And then I think things like having kind of frequently asked questions pages works really well, because you've got the content on there that people are actually searching online for, which can help you to rank and be a good opportunity to repurpose things for social media.
Yeah, the about page is so important because people want to get to know about you. And then like you say, going on to the FAQs side of a website, important because you can pick out the questions that people have asked you. You can go to your email box and pick out certain things that people, consistently ask of you and answer that online. And that kind of thing, that kind of answer that you're giving, it's the kind of thing that will be picked up by search engines. And like you say, and then those answers can be repurposed over onto your social media and things. So
that's exactly it. I mean, I think quite often there's this sort of disconnect between what's on people's websites and what they share on social. And actually, yes, of course, you need to share all the fun stuff, but quite often the things that your frequently asked questions and your services are sometimes the things that are actually going to get you into search. Now, one of the questions I was asked yesterday, actually, I think being one topic is, and it's a question that's been bandied around for years, is people, well, I don't really understand the return on investment of something like using LinkedIn. I mean, my response was, without having looked at what this person was doing with their LinkedIn, was, it's not just about and it's similar with SEO in your website. Actually, you don't always see a direct attribution from I shared this LinkedIn post, or I had my website rebuilt, and suddenly making like loads of sales overnight. For most businesses, it doesn't happen. If it did, we probably wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation. So I think it's really important, I would say to people, is to kind of look behind the scenes and see what's actually going on, because of the way that people search. So if you write a post here on LinkedIn, for example, you then go away, you might not see that much activity on that post, but if you go away and look at your website traffic, the likelihood is that you'll see a spike in people visiting in the next couple of days.
Moving the traffic over to your website. Yeah. I mean, online visibility is all about content, isn't it? As in, I know they've always gone, content is king, but you do have to have the content out there to be visible online. We've got some questions from Joe and Natalie. Do you want me to answer them?
Hello, Joe and Natalie. And Nina's here as well, but she's just popping up in our comments as a LinkedIn
I couldn't see who the other person was. Hello, Nina, if you're...
Well, there's a few others, Kelly. It's not just these ladies, but yeah. So, Joe, that is a perfect question, because it's one we actually forgot. We actually were going to cover and we didn't. So can you see the question?
Yeah, I can. So Joe Bubba asks, can overuse of keywords be negative for search engines? And this is a really good question. If you've chosen a key phrase that you are going to target for a certain blog post or a page, you need to use it about 1% of the total amount of words in that blog post. So if it's a 1,000-word blog post, you want to use it, only about 10 times. And this is called keyword density. So you're not overusing, and we call it keyword stuffing, not overusing the term. Now, one thing I wanted to touch on that is the search engines are intelligent now, and they will actually figure out what you mean, but if you use the words backwards in a different order, or perhaps if you use a word that means the same thing, you can also use that kind of phrase as well. So you can sort of mix the phrases up, and the search engines will still rank you for, one term when you're mentioning a similar term. So you can mix it all up, but don't keep using the same phrase continuously, because it sounds awful. We want to write for humans, and you will get penalised if you use it too much.
Yes. And then Natalie said, can search engines read text on graphics?
So if it's an overlay, I want to say they will be able to do that soon. So an overlay, there's two different ways you can do text. If you had something on Canva, you put the text on the top of your image in Canva. That's like an overlay. Mm-hmm. And search engines generally would find it quite hard to read that. I mean, Natalie, I want to say that they're going to be able to read that sort of stuff now, but we need to make it easier for search engines to see, to understand that stuff. And that's why we use alt tags. But alt tags are predominantly for visually impaired people, which is why I love alt tags. And I think everyone should use them, because it helps people to understand what's on the image. It's better to help search engines in whatever you do. So even assuming that they could probably read text on an image, use your alt tag always.
Yeah, I think that's really key, actually, because I think we're not here to talk about accessibility. Next month, I actually have an accessibility expert joining me to talk about that. But I think there's new EU legislation coming in around this stuff in June or July, about around accessibility. So I think it is increasingly important, and I'm sure some of you watching have seen people writing. So when you post on LinkedIn, for example, it gives you the option to put alt text underneath your photo, which you should always do. but also you increasingly see people putting it at the bottom of their posts. And that's an accessibility thing as well, because a lot of people don't read screen readers.
Oh,
And
I love
also,
that you said that, because I always use my alt tags, but you are so right. I should also put it into my post. I've seen that before.
I have to confess, I don't do it. It's a tip from this lovely lady, Katie Merrion, I know. And one of the things as well is around, which I didn't realise, is obviously if you think about how most people look at social media on their phones, quite often, even if you are using a screen reader, even if you've got if you're someone with poor reception, for example, it won't necessarily work.
Yeah.
So it's just aiding the accessibility.
Cool.
So another thing to think about. So one of the questions, Kelly, is you picked up on blogs, and this is a question, you know, I know it's interesting because I think we're seeing a little bit of a backlash on that at the moment, but obviously the very much the trends, you know, the trends in the last few years have been very much trying to move everybody towards video and away from blogs and written content and things like that. Personally, I'm the person who buys a newspaper every week and reads a paper book. So I'm clearly more of I like to consume things in a certain way. But I know there's a lot of kind of trends around, you know, you should be producing video, which for a lot of people is a real, but I guess my question in a roundabout way is, there's still value in producing blog content for small businesses?
Text will always be. Yeah. If you think about the thousands and thousands of years that we have always read to each other and told stories, and humans are just, they love information. We will always read. And so blog posts, you will always be providing content to people, and they will always rank on search engines, even with my sort of vision of how websites are going to end up being, where we'll literally be in a virtual, you know, shop and all of that. You'll still have to find that shop. You'll still have to use text, and videos are so strong, but using the two together, it's just a proven and excellent way of using your time. So you can use research key phrase, you can write a blog post around this key phrase and produce a video for it, but embed, so put that video on YouTube or Vimeo, whatever your favorite is, embed that video onto the blog post, and that is going to be like really strong content. So you're giving people the option to either watch or, you know, read, and it's whatever their preference is at the time. I know myself, sometimes I will watch a video because that's what I want and that's my intention, and other times I'll read about it or just scan through. So it sort of depends on the person, what device they're looking at, you know, this content in. So support the two if you can and you're confident in it. And also just remember that if you've written the blog post, you can use AI to make a script from that blog post, or vice versa. Like if you're video heavy, do the video first and then do the blog post. But yeah, they'll support each other.
Yeah, and I think there's it's because I've got all of these LinkedIn lives that I've done over the last on a YouTube channel, which is just away on YouTube, and I'm still meaning to put it on the website. But actually, that was a really useful tip, because I think I'm just going to embed the blog into the blog. I'm going to embed that into the blog part, so people have got chances to. And and as you say, you know, it's also depending on how people feel on the day. You know, sometimes we want to listen to video, and sometimes, you know, especially if we're, you know, we've got, say you're doing the housework or something, you haven't actually got time to sit down and actually read that content. Right. You've just got it going in the background. So I think that's really useful. And then repurposing that onto social media and your emails is obviously a no-brainer. But I think one of the things for us really that we sort of wanted to get across is it's all around. Yes, there's the keyword research and there's that writing, that content, but you really need to understand what your audience would need to hear from you. Because answering those questions and also sharing the behind the scenes and talking about the differences in your business, and actually the differences, because on the surface, if you're an accountant, you're no different from the accountant down the road. It's the people within your organization that make the real difference. And that's kind of what people really want to see.
Trying to be unique and stand out, isn't it? Which I know all small businesses find really, really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a bit of a process to that, isn't there?
There is a real process, and actually, I think, you know, I think a lot of the work you do is behind the scenes, and there is so much to marketing that is behind the scenes. I mean, you know, I whenever I'm researching for a content strategy or social media or email, you know, it's the research and the things that are going on that takes the time.
It's all that in the background, isn't it?
Yeah. Or audience, what you want to talk about, is everything correct? Are we educating people? You know, and I think, you know, it's really about using the two to actually drive conversation, to get people to the point where actually they do want to talk to you. You know,
it's like you were touching on earlier about being, you know, that real person, and even in a blog post, you do not have to sound like a boring robot. Like, literally, just bring your personality out. It's okay to be quirky or, you know, friendly, silly, whatever. Let's bring that out.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, that's a kind of probably a topic for another day, but I think that's something that people, you know, it's something that people really struggle with. And I think now, of course, it's been quite interesting because we've kind of got this advent of AI where, you know, people are saying, and I think this trend again is kind of had its peak. Oh, you know, everything's going to be AI generated. You marketing people are going to be out of work. You know, you legal copywriters are going to be out of work because actually we can generate everything, and it does have its place. But I think it's really interesting how that's kind of sort of intersected with this whole conversation around personal branding, and you need to put yourself out there, and you know, and actually kind of how do you marry the two, and what does that mean? And you know, and I think for me it's actually really, it's about really making sure that people feel comfortable with what they're happy to share, and that doesn't need to be everything, and sometimes it can't be. I mean, I always use this analogy, but I've got I know someone who's a copywriter who I do some work with, and she posted on LinkedIn a while ago about having some mushroom tea, and the last time she did mushrooms was like at a festival in 2008 or something. And it really made me laugh, and then I'm like, but I couldn't post anything like that because, you know, one of my clients is a conformity assessment body, so you know, not great, not ideal. So I think, you know, there's definitely kind of a place for sharing personal content, but also not oversharing. So I think, I guess the way we probably want to round this up, Kelly, is just giving some people some kind of helpful tips of how they can actually get started with doing this. I mean, obviously there's the importance of a kind of laying that foundation. So reviewing what you've got at the moment, what's working, what isn't, I think is really key, because quite often people are like, oh my God, it's terrible, nothing's working. And actually when you get someone else to look at it, quite often it's just a case of these things need tweaking, or maybe we could add this, or we don't need to completely change everything. And you know, doing that research around your customers, your keywords, your messaging, what your content should be, which I say just do this, is that, you know, a lot of work, but actually, and then kind of working out what the strategic approach is that's right for you and your business. But also alongside that, there's some really simple things that people can do to improve things, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, one tip, if you're starting out and you've really got no money at all and you don't want to spend on anything, continue to write those blog posts, but just make sure that you're actually answering your audience's questions rather than what you had for, you know, in your cup of tea. So make sure you look through your emails, find those questions that people are asking you, and then write about it online. And that's going to give you loads of content. And by the end of all that, you might have 24 by the end of the year or something like that. As you build your business, you can then go back and revise that kind of stuff, and really then maybe pay someone to do some keyword research for you, or pay some for SEO tools. A good SEO tool, which is quite cheap, is Ubersuggest. and that's quite cheap, sort of over lifespan. Or you can use Answer the People, which is quite a good place to go and find out what people are searching. Quora also and Reddit have got like questions on those websites that are genuine questions, and you can answer them. And then when you've done those sort of blog posts, you can take those snippets. You've got multiple social media posts then, and they're all targeted around that key phrase. So that would really help. And the other thing, reviews, like get your Google reviews online and get people to mention your service within the review. So for example, search engine optimization, I would ask people to write that out for me so that the search engines understand the review is about search engine optimization.
Yeah, I think it was interesting what you just said about because when I'm working with people on that sketches for their email and social, it's like, well, what are your frequently asked questions? And quite often people say, I don't have any. I don't know. So I say what you say, look back through your emails and think about the things, you know, if you're a networker and you're at an event, you know, if people ask you a question, write it down.
Yeah.
Because that's what people want to know. And that might be about you and your business, but it might actually be about the services you offer and how you help. Mm-hmm. And that's really useful content. I remember during lockdown, I worked with a financial advisor, and we said, oh, you know, I said, go away and, you know, here's a spreadsheet, fill out your frequently asked questions, because quite often there's different ways of answering the same question. She came back, she said, oh, now I've got 200 questions about mortgages.
It's so cool. Exactly. It's a really simple way of just, and you know, you want to answer your clients' questions, and you look so good when you write that on your website, and then another client asks you and you say, oh, here's a link, I've answered it all on my blog post, or you know, here's a link, I've answered it all on my Instagram. It's a really cool way of doing it. Yeah, it makes you look really pro.
It does. And I think like you said earlier, so Google yourself, see what comes up.
Yes. So that, it was just interesting to show you how the search engines will rank your social media bio and your posts and everything. So if you Google yourself, you might see a website up there if you're working hard on it, but you will also see your social media and your social media bio and your social media posts, and you'll just start to see what people are can actually, you know, see about you and what the search engines are picking up.
It's also a really, I mean, I've just updated my website, and I was having a little look at them. I say I, with help from my husband, because he's a developer, not just because I just needed him to see it, but I was actually looking at the menu, because obviously these things constantly need updating. And I noticed on the menu there was a couple of pages which I fully suspect if I click on, I'll get a 404, because they're not there anymore. So I think, which I will share the link to in a minute. There's really minimal things that I think sometimes we forget to do. Is like actually check our links.
Check your own website. It's a huge thing. Yeah, I would advise everyone to go on their computer and check the website and just have a mooch around. And then when you're sat on the sofa, you know, in the evening or something like that, because let's face it, we're all on our phones, go to your own website and have a mooch around. Like as in, you'll just find these little mistakes and realize that you've not updated this or you've not updated that, or there's dud links which will get you penalized by search engines too. You want to make the visitor's journey so simple, and that's what the search engines are looking for.
Yeah. So I think just to kind of summarize, because I'm aware we're kind of 34 minutes in, and we're probably going to get kicked out by LinkedIn in a minute. I think for me, what to get away from the conversation is to see the relationship between social media and search engines is becoming more and more important, which sounds really scary, but it doesn't need to be, because actually, if you are consistently creating the content that your audience wants to see, you know, with that parrot on your shoulder of actually what are my keywords, remember to integrate these but not too much, and write naturally, you know, that's going to do you know, that's really going to help you in the long term build, you know, a better presence online and increase your digital footprint. It's all about thinking about, what do my audience want to, what do they want to see and hear from me? And I think one of the things that is really important probably to flag as well is if we've got people who are spending money or thinking about spending money on paid ads, you do need to make sure that you've got good organic content across your website, across your emails, across your social media, because it makes everything so much more cost effective.
If someone comes to an ad and then sees nothing else on your website because you haven't put any other content out, you're not going to be as trusted. It will feel untrustworthy. So it is really nice to get that organic content in as well. And
then I think, so we've kind of doing the research, writing naturally, being consistent. And I think probably the most important lesson is actually just, kind of taking that action to actually do something. I mean, you might not have the capacity to write a blog every single week or, be posting on multiple social media platforms. So actually it's really about working out, I think, on the offset, what you've got the time, money and resources to actually do, and what's the best use of your time.
Yeah, people often say, because obviously it's time consuming, but if you look into the future, you build all this content up, you'll eventually be able to charge more because more people are inquiring with you. So, that is your business growth right there. Stop worrying about the dragging work in. You're naturally getting it because people can see you.
I think that is and we all need to remember that when we're kind of sat there sometimes, because I know, a lot of people feel like, oh God, I've just sent, I've sent an email out and nobody's replied, or I've posted on LinkedIn or Instagram and it's just not getting much traction. So it's really important to just remember that a lot of people are lurkers. They're never going to reply, they're never going to comment. Quite often, in my experience, they're the ones who actually end up being clients.
Yeah, totally. Oh, sorry, my phone's just
and I think it's just, so kind of really important to have that reframe as well around sort of how you are helping people and things. So I don't know if anyone, we've still got quite a few people watching actually, so I don't know if anybody's got any questions for Kelly or I before we go. If you want to post them in the comments, we'll obviously come back to you later and answer them as well. But I think, Kelly, you wanted to do a little bit of a plug for your newsletter, didn't you?
I would love people to sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to pop it into the chat and you will receive a PDF about written content. So I'll put it into the chat afterwards because I can't actually do it on here. So
I'm the same.
I'd love you to sign up.
And I think my little shameless plug is that actually, sorry, it's not that shameless, but I'm giving away one 60-minute marketing review, which is either focused on email or social media, because obviously we can't get everything done in 60 minutes. So I'm going to post a link, but there's a monthly prize draw where one person will get drawn at random, get an opportunity to just spend an hour with me, if you're not completely sick of me by this point, to actually get some eyes on your content or your analytics behind the scenes and actually get some actionable points that you can actually take away and implement.
What a great opportunity.
Thank you. So I will post that in the comments now. But I think thank you for everybody for joining us this morning. We do hope you found it useful. And as I said, we'll pop the links in the chat box. So do send Kelly or I a direct message if you would like to know anything else.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you. No worries. Nice to see you.